I am sure sports. You know me there, I'm coast to coast representing. I mean, I say this is righteous representing for Omar. You don't know, come get the sports over here from near and far. Boy. Me say I am sure sports, one thing me sure about. When me say sure, that me not doubt. Come get your sports, get it over here. Come subscribe, repost and share. I am sure sports, one thing me sure about. When me say sure, that me not doubt. Come get your sports, get it over here. Come subscribe, repost and share. If me not sure, that me not say it. Know who score, that me not say it. Never know the game play, that me not say it. If me never seen a game, me no know who play. For your sports news, better come over here so. For your soccer news, then come over here so. If you don't love sports, still come over here so. For the day done, you are gonna love over here so.
So when it comes on to behavior concerning football, Jamaica is decent. I am sure that if we can get all of these things done, set in place by the end of April, it gives us enough time before the World Cup campaign. Not afraid of no Brazil, no Argentina with these crap of players. We are good enough. Remember to like, subscribe, share. Listen, comment. Let me know what your thoughts are.
Tricknick Jerk Marinade gives your meats and vegetables authentic Jamaican jerk flavor. The spices are directly from Jamaica. Spices like jerk seasoning, allspice, Scotch bonnet pepper, fresh scallions, thyme, ginger, and garlic. The key ingredients to a great jerk marinade. 0% sugar and low in sodium. You want to try it?
Made up of 18 Jamaican herbs and spices. Add delicious, bold flavor to your next grilling experience. Flavoring sauce, a marinade, basting, condiment, or topping. Tricknick Jerk Barbecue Sauce.
All right. Good evening, ladies and plenty men. I am Manning's Man, and this is I Am Sure Sports. And, we want to get right into our discussion. As usual, we ask you, if this is your first time on the platform, to hit the subscribe button, right? Not only that, but, share the content with others and hit the like button, right? As we talk with Mr. John Wall and none other than Mr. Simon Preston, the man who gave the 2023 year in review at the press conference today. And Mr. Wall is the man who kind of had the gasoline. So Simon had the match and Mr. Wall had the gasoline. And there was a fire. So let's welcome Mr. Wall. Good evening, Simon. Good evening. Welcome to I Am Sure Sports.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Hope all is well at your end.
Listen, well, all is well, and well done to you both. I have had the privilege of working with you guys since, in June in Austria, and it has been a tremendous time. I think the strides that have been made by the senior team, speaks volume to the contribution and the work. There have been fights and battles and challenges and difficulties, but I think the accomplishments have been tremendous, and great work by John. I mean, if people sometimes see like the background work, they'll have a greater appreciation. Same thing, Simon, in terms of the media stuff. So kudos to you guys. People will never know all the other things that make the things on the forefront work the way they do, and that's credit to what we call the backroom stuff. So big up to you guys, and good to be here, on the platform to discuss football, a sports that we all love.
I agree to that.
Yeah, man. All right. So let me begin it, John, right? And then you can chime in.
I'm the elephant in the room now. So, okay.
You know what is funny? Someone asked about elephant in the room, and they said that Simon was the elephant in the room. I don't know why, because there is a facial reaction when he was asked a question that had a part A and B, and he was just about to give his technical expertise when he was bailed out by one Mr. Bailey. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? That's that. I see. That's the same look that he had on it. You see that, John? That's the same look he had in the presser. You see? Yeah. So he's trying to make that face again. You just need to change the shirt.
Exactly. It's more Simon says, not interested. Yeah.
Yeah, but listen, we had a conversation, right? And you were providing me with some information that I think is very important for people to understand as we are going to look at like just the football. But you drew this reference between Denmark because of their population size and Uruguay and their population size in comparison to Jamaica and about professional minutes being played by players. I mean, can you just explain that to those persons who would not have heard it, and in what context does that apply to what we have now in Jamaica?
Yeah. Institutionally, a good book, me giving out book recommendations again, but that's my personality. Soccernomics is a book written by Simon Kupa, and it's pretty on a regular basis. Simon, correct me if I'm wrong, updated. I think every third or fourth year. But they kind of looked at the game out of a social context, meaning that BNP will affect how good your national team is going to be, and obviously your domestic football too. But one other major factor is how many inhabitants does the country have? Meaning Brazil, which is more mere a continent, 200 million. US 350. So by default, US is always underperforming.
Right.
So, and whereas if you can say Belgium is overperforming with 15, and I would say Denmark is probably overperforming. My home country has, by marathon table, been overperforming based on amount of inhabitants. And there's no transfer fees, as we know, in the international game. The kind of commodity that you're looking after is in the U20s perspective, or might be even U17s, it's senior professional minutes or environments equals clubs that they're currently being at. Those players might change, but these are reoccurring patterns and not just like the past 4 years. It's over time.
Okay.
That is pretty consistent. So based on these references, and this is probably me being coming from where I'm from, I'm very factual and more trying to prove things by empirical evidence than trying to just sling out opinions. And I have a ton of respect for that, but to the fact that others might think differently. But I think what we can do is actually change the conversation.
Yeah.
Meaning, I can take this as a close example for me. Do I view Zlatan Ibrahimovic as a less of a Swede than I am? No, I don't. But it does not mean that we are not empowering more players from whoever they are, wherever they're from, to actually play for a national team. And for us is by providing clarity creates more of an agreement. Correct?
Yes.
But if we're not clear about the context that we're up against, how can we possibly defeat them? That's the sole purpose of this conversation. How can Jamaica overperform, which they've done in different sports, but
Yes.
as well as in others? How can we overperform with our way without doing a copy paste from some other country, but bearing in mind what we're up against and can we recreate environments that potentially can nurture future elite football players.
Yeah. I think that is such an important. I think that is such an important point. It is, like I said, understanding what are the facts, and these are the facts. And okay, what do we have in Jamaica, or what do Jamaicans have, whether those who are domestic or international, outside of the geographical borders, and how can we overperform in football in the same way bigger populations are we overperform bigger populations in track and field. How can that be? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's important. Yeah.
And that's kind of a nucleus of the whole thing. That if you take it back to the core, what is everyone else overlooking that we can actually be excelling and being excellent at? Meaning, perhaps, now I'm just throwing it out there, I might be throwing more Molotovs, who knows? Can we, JPL, which is deemed as a semi-professional league, it's not me saying it, that's the status, have the earliest average age first team debuts in this hemisphere? On average. That would be an interesting thing. Because here's another fact. In order to become a Champions League player, you will have to make your first team debut around when you're 18 and younger.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to be a Champion League player, right, you have to make your debut 18 years old.
It's not the highest league we're talking about, but as long as you're making the debut in a senior level.
Okay. So one of the solutions to kind of bring in, because you mentioned the amount of professional minutes that are played, like 2,000.
21,885 by Denmark.
Yeah.
And Uruguay 18,800. And if you divide that by 20 something, then you're looking at, as you know, over 1,000 minutes per player. But the distribution is going to be uneven, of course, by default. But yet again, who owns the playing time? What kind of examples do we have of players making the jump abroad and creating a successful career and thus making a debut in the Jamaican national team and thus contributing?
Yeah. And what that could mean is that if the players, like you said, just putting something out there, if the players could make their Premier League debut, say at 15, because it is semi-pro, say 15, they play 15, 16. By the time they get to 17, if they have played a couple of seasons, they'd have close to say 60 games. 60 times 90 is what, 500. 500.
Let's say 100 because of all the added time nowadays.
Yeah. Which would mean that at least we are 1,000, so we're not as far away from the 2,000, because right now we're really at 0 professional minutes. So most of the players, because it's really the prime at that age group, the primary league is the schoolboy football, and nothing is wrong with it because you're in school. It's just that when those minutes are really added up, it's probably going to take like one season of schoolboy football to even add up to one full game when compared to the players, say, in Sweden or in Uruguay or in Denmark, if it is even possible to compare it. So because it's not going to work, the best thing to do is probably what you said: adjust the debut age at the Premier League, which will give the players more time in the semi-pro setting.
Yeah, but as we all know, with a complexer and bigger problem, one singular solution will not solve it all. It has to be a multiple ways of doing it and leading up to that point where they're actually making their debut. And this is where it all connects with coach education, grassroots education, frequency of organized training, exposure to good environments, to be exposed to, let's say, international football at an earlier age or even regional. It all combines and it creates a better, because even my perspective again, that the schoolboy or schoolgirl football is a very selective environment. It's not like that it belongs to everyone. It's still about winning and excelling in that way. But I would say, who is making decisions that's going to serve this player in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
Who is
Important.
making those decisions? And looking at this young girl or young boy, consequence of actions. If I'm late for a training, I'm not going to play. If I perhaps don't perform in one game, I might be on the bench, even though we might lose the game. If it means that I have to come in and contribute, then that's going to happen. You have to go through certain stages of things to understand it all. But yet again, it's just to serve the next coach. Then, just like you're in school, you're leaving the kid at a 6th grade to the 7th grade, and the 7th grade teacher expects them to know something, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're just going to blame the former teacher.
Yeah.
So I would say, why is it okay in certain environments that we have non-educated coaches that are educating players, but then you flip it and put it in a school system? Why is it not okay there?
Yeah. Good question. Simon, Bako's Cranky has joined, but Simon, anything you want to say based on what you've heard from John thus far?
Yeah, just to elaborate on the minutes, John spoke about the example with Denmark in a sense of overachieving. You look at perhaps England, a population of 56 million people, and just a shade over 13,000 minutes as well. So I think it just goes to show, where persons at that age group and what they are doing. And, there's a point that John has always mentioned in terms of the quantity of football, like the schoolboy football season, September to December. But as you know, the real nitty gritty of things, November to December, it's really a small group of schools, whereas the vast majority, they're in it for 6 weeks. Whereas you go to in another environment and you have individuals in Sweden, in Norway, in Scandinavia, in other parts of the globe, playing football 8, 9, even 10 months for the year. I personally feel like schools, the responsibility of schools is education, and clubs is for development. And I'm hopeful that that is something that can be more recognized locally.
Yeah. And I think the USA has caught on to that with their MLS Next Pro as a way of probably. So now the best players at the youth level don't play in college anymore.
Correct.
They are
Or
in
even high
MLS
school is
or even
dead.
high school. Yeah, they are in MLS
Yeah.
academies. So like it's like they are. I mean, it hasn't shown up yet in terms of, but if you look at even the age of their squad, it has significantly dropped, and I think that is because of the focus on the MLS Next Pro, that developmental pathway, instead of relying on the college system. Though I just had Romario Williams on, and he spoke about how far Division One college football is when compared to our high school football. He says it is not even close. It's like pro football, he says. And so he left Jamaica, I think, at 17, right? He didn't come and do his next year because he had gone to the under 17 World Cup.
Yep.
He was part of the under 20 team, and his development just took off exponentially because of that environment. While some of the players who he played under 17 with in that World Cup, who stayed and went back to school for a next year, just flew like under the radar. They're just like,
Yeah, less than half of the members of that squad actually turn professional. You know, you
Yeah,
can become,
listen up.
Amar Holness or Mario Williams of this world, the Albus Powell, a very small percentage went on in the professional ranks.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
John, question for you, John. You were talking about doing population comparison, in terms of how you sort of think about players and over underachieving. How does resources and administration informs that? Because when you're mentioning more of execution in terms of coaches and minutes and all that. But how does having quality leadership and administration along with resources informs the development of your football program? Because in the US, there's a lot of resources, right? Tons of resources.
But they fail because US is a very bad example.
No, what I'm talking about is the journey, right? What I'm talking about is the journey.
Yeah.
Which is they're on a journey and they have certain goals and they're trying to achieve those goals. And over time, I think they'll eventually get there. Because they'll pour money and resources into their programs and they'll hire the best coaches eventually. They'll get there.
I'm gonna throw one big thing there. US is land upside down, just like Alice in Wonderland. It's the most communistic sport-driven at the professional level there is, and it's the most capitalistic way of doing things on youth sport. There you go. If you turn it upside down, then you would have a better product. How much does it cost for a youth player in the US to play soccer? On average, $3,000 US. What population are you missing?
Yeah, but in the US, John, as you know, there's real competition for the best athletes, right? So unlike some other countries where soccer dominates, in the US you have basketball and American football, which is competing with soccer/football. So that makes it more challenging. And you're right, the more less affluent kids may be excluded because it's very expensive to play travel soccer, right? Yeah. So I would agree with that concept.
So it would mean a part of it is that you need certain things, desperation and using football as a vehicle for social climbing. Yeah. That is really an ingredient that we always have to take into variable. Jamaica has that, to be fair, to have that. But what I would say, in order to make, and when referring back to your former question, it's hard to quantify because the numbers that I said are quantifiable. Leadership and administrator is hard to quantify, where it's more qualitative in a way. It's a quality that can guide and sense of purpose and all that. Yes. But yet again, you always have to dissect what is the federation, what is a club. Imagine to have clubs who have their own culture and their own playing style, which should be, the cultural context should be shown upon in the pitch. That's how clubs are, in a way. So let's take Barcelona, even the cathedral, La Sagrada de Familia. Correct me if I'm wrong, Reverend?
Correct.
Correct. It's more even how the lines and how they sit are distributed even. Okay? And it's a very team environment that nurtures the way FC Barcelona plays. Madrid, the capital, is in a different way. So you see those cultural contexts affects the club. And then football is just a reflection of the social context that we happen to be in.
Oh, but, okay. That's interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah. So whereas you get the Red Bull drink, okay, what does the icon look like? The logo. What is the logo Red Bull?
A Red Bull? I don't know. I don't drink that.
It's a bull with what? Wings on it. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is a very capitalistic thing. How do Red Bull play football?
Like Red Bull. I mean, if you look at Salzburg and RP Leipzig, they a lot of pace going forward. They play. I mean, just high tempo.
So it means the logo transfers to the pitch. And it's actually a constructed style that fits with their business, hence they're recruiting in that way, and it affects the pitch.
Okay, that is similar to what they call philosophy. I think how does that work with Jamaica? Seeing that we're in a context now where we have the Jamaica has several Jamaicans beyond its geographical border who culturally are raised in a different environment. The Jamaican in Europe, for example, is culture different from the one who grew up in the streets of Jamaica or in New York or in Atlanta in the USA. All right. So how does that mix? What culture now shapes how the team operates?
It has to be a very global team. No, for me, I think family is a social context you cannot underestimate too, because that's going to be the first institution that you meet that's going to affect you as a person, how you develop, of course. And it's not just what city you're from or whatever, and the friends. That comes a little bit later when that takes over. I think Jamaica, what it stands for, it means like everyone, correct?
Yeah, out of 21 people.
Okay, good. All right. And it also means I am stuck in Old Ghanese, if I understand my history correct.
You're stuck in?
No, I am stuck. Jamaica. I am stuck in Old Ghanese when they came across on the boats.
Okay.
That's what it means. That's what Jamaica means originally. I am stuck.
Yeah,
so congrats, Mannix. You've been stuck for ages.
So we need to change the name of the country.
No.
We need
what
to
I'm
find
saying, man.
Unstuck.
Unstuck. We're fluent. We're global. And Jamaica is probably one of the most powerful icons. The flag in itself is so powerful across the globe. And it's more about the flag and how we can act within it. And we have so many different flavors to it that it actually becomes something else than a jerk chicken. Get it?
Yeah. All right.
Meaning, in order not to make it harder, but yes, everything is connected, but we can still rely on certain things that are in the open, info and facts that can actually guide and shape the path of creating a vision of what we're supposed to be. Clarity.
Yeah. All right, Cranky.
So John, let's pivot the conversation a little bit. Where do you have concrete examples where one could show where a country, which may not have done well in the sport, have revolutionized their football that then aligns with their culture and their playing style and end up performing on the world stage? Do you have such an example?
I can take it from a different sport, though. All Blacks, New Zealand.
Okay.
Which is a very powerful example.
Similar population.
I would say, I could say Croatia. 4.5 million. Is that far off from Jamaica?
Yeah, but they're from the old Yugoslavia, right? So they have a history. It just got broken up, and they're probably part of that whole Yugoslavian construct historically. So Serbia, Yugoslavia, all those from the Balkans, I would say, probably had a history.
I have friends who are from there. I have friends from, to a certain degree, it's a former Eastern Bloc, but basically Jamaica has done the reverse engineering on their track and field before, and recreated themselves in the aggregate and came out of it completely differently. Meaning, as well as brain drain is a typical thing that happens in second and third world countries.
Oh, brain drain is not on the
Correct.
chat, though. Oh, sorry.
He's talking about literal brain drain of people migrating and
I thought he
migrating to
knew.
another
I thought
country.
he knew the comment on him.
No. The comment on him brain drain is not. Yeah, he's not there tonight.
Thank you, Cranky. But the same phenomena can happen in sports. Meaning, I know what Sweden is, and they even acclaimed it in their top league. We're a development league. Period. Our best players are never going to play here. They're going to be abroad. Period. Our job is to actually sell players so we can keep going and become better and better and better. So you do soft goals together with hard facts. But how can we not more reverse engineering? But said it today that I think honestly Jamaica can win the World Cup 2034.
Which World Cup? Football World Cup? The real football?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why would I say such a thing? Morocco semi-final now in this current one. Qatar 2022. A very diaspora-based country. Agreed?
Yep. Yeah.
3 is that the format of the World Cup is changing. 48 countries, 3 team groups. It can peak in a different way. Bigger elephants will fall because of that. So from that point, you can actually do a reverse engineering all the way leading up. If it means I would be deemed crazy and Jamaica would only reach the semifinal in the Men's World Cup, well, it's fine. It's okay. But then we have overachieved.
But John, let me just say something. So when I'm looking at the comparisons, Morocco, for example, people of Moroccan heritage aspire to play for Morocco in a lot of instances, right?
Yep.
And they feel connected to the country even more so than in other places. Maybe religion also informs that actually. How does one create that same sense of affinity between, say, Caribbean, Jamaica, and the rest of its population that have migrated or have Jamaican heritage? Now, I would admit that Hagrams have done a good job of recruiting, but how do you convince someone who has an opportunity to play for where they were born to play for Jamaica? Because you will need to be able to source the talent to be able to achieve the projection that you've indicated of 2034.
What if I told you that is already going on? So it means, as ignorant you could want to be of being in Jamaica, and you think that's the center of the world, I just want to reverse it. Meaning, what is Jamaica doing to connect to their big diaspora? But at the same time, of course, domestically grow the game so it becomes closer to becoming the hotbed of talents, just like in track and field. There's no excluding, and it's more inclusion that we're talking about.
And I like that.
But John, don't you? One second, management. You jump in there. Don't you need resources to really put? If you want to really put a good program in place, a sustainable one will give the player the best chance for success. Don't you need resources to be able to do so?
Well, if we would put that in the business world, does everything look green on next year's budget before the things that we're going to venture and go for? Or should we start looking at us as a startup where ideas and spirit and strategy counts more from the actual resources you have. The best thing for things to happen, at least to my knowledge, is actually start to do, not talk.
Sorry, Manny, you were going to say?
Yeah, because I was going to say that because again, and John has come back to it, which is that this is not at the exclusion of the domestic game, because just like track and field, you can get players, athletes who are in the collegiate system, but that should not prevent or stop the development of the local game, because the local game needs to be developed so that players can be sold, which is what is happening in Sweden, consistently being sold to top markets so that the game can be better. The better the game, is going to be the better the talent. And so, just by having more domestic players who are trained and developed and sold to the international market will make Jamaica more attractive, because now you'll have, for example, a Leon Bailey makes Jamaica more attractive. A Dujan Whisper Richards. So the more players, I believe, the Andre Blakes, these players, the Trevante Stewart, all of these players who are over there. So I think there is that component that must not be underlooked, like what John is saying, and getting a player at Liverpool who has Jamaican connection should not affect the need to, like I said, develop the domestic game and lift the level from the coaching, from the environment that the players are playing in, having good pathways, having the right resources and the best coaches at the lower levels, like we're speaking about, where we have educated football coaches who are educated on football, educating the players at the grassroots. So when they come to under 17, you don't have to say, you don't know what the principles of defending really are, and you want to play in, those things are taught from early. So I think both are important as well.
So John, do we need, so I'm going to use three words here. Do we need enhancement, evolution, or revolution?
Can we have all three at the same time?
I'm not sure how three at the same time work as effectively
No.
you like it. If you want to get, it
I
depends on
know, I know.
2024 is pretty close, right? It's not far away. It may
Yep.
seem that way, but it's only 10 years. Yeah.
Yep. What I would say, I would say more on, when you introduce a new product on the market, it's usually those first people that you must speak to and get devoted people to it. And then you're going to get a little bit those early adopters, and then you get early market, and then you get the laggards. Meaning, what we create in environments that can spearhead certain things can get the rest of it with it. But if you're trying to attack everything at once, you're going to fail. I would say evolution will always be better, because then don't people think about the changes already made and they're just into it. But in order to catch up, you need to have certain places where there are revolution. But that will create an evolution. An enhancement comes later.
I like this.
For me, it's more, it's hard based on the position in the way that I have and where my hours can be spent overly in total. I would love to do everything, but it is about, I'm willing to say if more, I'm leaving more behind than I actually get to see the light of day of. That's my honesty. I'm perfectly fine with that, because this is not about an ego trip. It's about those kids that deserves better and deserves a future to look forward to. And overly all to have a domestic game that's just prospering, and how things can trickle into the system. By not having clubs doing things domestically, I would say to this day, I would say it's a couple of $1 million that's gone missing from Jamaican football because of training compensation and solidarity fees.
Okay.
Sorry,
Oh,
because
yeah.
between the ages 12 to 23 is when the solidarity fee hits.
So what's the biggest challenge to achieve the 2034 objective?
It is about taking unegoistic decisions. Simple.
Yeah. Let me take this. Simon, you want to ask John that question on the screen, and then probably you can chime in and let John afterwards.
Sure. There's a question on the screen, John. It says compare us to African countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon. Are the resources, demographics, and level of management similar? Before John answers, I think he's hit the nail on the head in terms of the other aspects of things. And when John started in the under 20 camps in March of this year, he made a statement that I think persons are slowly understanding in Jamaica about shifting from being tournament driven to shifting their approach to something along the lines of development and long term. So we're not thinking about we're just in camp just because there's a tournament down the road, but more so thinking about the fruits of the labor in the future. So it's about the long term. So when John is in his rocking chair, he'll be able to see Jamaica lifting up title after title after title.
Yeah. And go ahead, John. You want to take that first question about the Nigeria, the Ghana? Yeah.
Senegal, yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard to compare in terms of inhabitants because these are massive countries. Speaking of Nigeria, people don't realize how big of a country it is. It's over 200 million, to my knowledge, I would say, fairly.
One of the biggest in the world.
And and Ghana. Because of the size of these populations, you can, by default, just have a selective process.
Yeah.
Meaning, I select one player per 1,000. Okay, let's just take that number. Whereas in Jamaica, it might be 1 out of 60 or 50. Okay?
Yeah.
Per that feeds a national team player. So that makes it hard. Furthermore, all of these countries have, I would say, Nigeria has underperformed based on their inhabitants. So I would say, and leading these countries, I'm not sure if there's continuity in the president posts certain key stakeholders. I'm not sure how long those tenures are in African countries. And I don't want to see sound like I'm just throwing them away, just they're continuously start to fail or continuing to do that. But from Ghana, at least, Right to Dream is a good environment. But you have certain environments that are better. But to best to my knowledge, it falls because of the amount of inhabitants.
Yeah, I memean, we're looking for countries with comparative, and it's very difficult to do because even the ones that population size are similar, they have a history of the football. I think if you think about countries in upward trajectory, Ecuador is a good example. For example, Ecuador has been making progress upwards for a while now. I mean, they have an interesting construct where they have a benefactor there, but they've been making really good progress at their youth level and their more senior team.
Yeah, but that is like one person owning a club that most of the best talents are.
That is true.
Yeah, it's like a billionaire just say, okay, all the best players in Ecuador, they are going to play in my club at my academy, and all of them get sold from that. Really from. So a lot of the players who have moved from Ecuador overseas are from that particular club setup. But maybe it's a good example. This one says Mali has 7 U17 World Cup appearance. I'm curious if John has studied their success.
Yeah, they have the U17s now. A semifinal is impressive. I think it's more it's not just random act, but I think the fact of I know that FIFA is trying to bring structure at times, and then things has just gone to shit. Whereas when they act like this, it seems to be working at the U17s. I just wonder how many times they are actually born on that year, which I would be questioned to. And past history of Africa has shown that the birth certificate has been questionable even when they're measuring and taking the wrist and doing the X-ray. It doesn't seem like they're 17. No. But not to demean them too much. But I think it would be a bad polar star to watch and follow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't start.
Today you responded to one of the questions, and where you said that you asked one of the journalists, is every time we fail to qualify a failure, right?
Yeah.
Can you expound on that? Because I think like people believe every time that we fail to qualify for something, it is deemed failure. But is it really failure? Because is it about qualifying, or like you said, like Simon said, you preparing the players so that 20 years from now, do you may fail to qualify, you become very consistent in playing at these things. But expound a little bit on that.
Okay. Did Michael Jordan win every year the NBA?
Every time he went to the finals.
Oh, there you go. But he didn't win every year.
No.
Correct. No. And has Brazil won every World Cup?
Not even half of the World Cups that have taken place.
Okay. So this is just a media-created thing of using the word failure and success as just the two divining things. Everything between doesn't exist. It's cool to be a journal because you know the result in hand, so you actually look at, you allow that to be your glasses. Correct? But then I must say, it cannot be good reading glasses they are using. Because they are not the ones that are actually looking at the future and seeing what it means to actually develop players or a team. And everyone knows that a U17 team, not everyone is going to make the first team. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And the retainment of those players making the first team, that's what we should be looking at. So there are different ways of looking at what's defined success. Even looking at a club, if they manage to stay up, that's success for them.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yeah.
So we have to sometimes look at it. Can we be consistent about a few things, challenge about it? Even certain clubs say, we aspire to be the top 3 every year. But they know it's so hard to be number 1 every single year. Unless you're breaching 115 Premier League regulations and win 5 out of 6. Sorry, it was a man shitty thing, but that was me.
This is my Man City fans take you on, you know.
No, but in all seriousness, I say it like this. If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. So it becomes a public, opinionated club instead of actually standing for something. This is what we deem important. This is how we're going to follow it, instead of shifting road every single time to please what the media output is thinking about you. It's like being the shy boy entering high school for the first day, and you don't know what your classmates are going to think about you, or the girls, or whatever.
Yeah.
Me, I don't care. I don't have any hair anymore, so I don't care.
Yeah, I like that though, because the truth, what is the what is the final outcome? And is there really a final outcome, or is it just a continuous journey? And while you may
It's
not
an
qualify
infinite
for,
game. It's
yeah,
an infinite game.
there you go. Like Safan just says, there you go, an infinite game. I like that because yeah, under 17 may not qualify. Is it failure if that under 17 crop of players stay together and take it to the World Cup? Did they fail in the under 17 qualifiers, or were they prepared for a bigger thing years down the line? What then is failure?
You
let's
have
jump
to
on that a
lose.
little bit. Actually.
You have to lose.
Yeah,
Let's stay on that point. Is John still here? He stepped away.
yeah.
No. I'm listening.
So John, we have an inherent conflict between coaches having long-term strategy and the need for the immediacy of success, because the job performance determines whether or not you retain your position. So how does what balance the two, actually? Because if you don't have positive outcome, you may not be around to progress the team as you'd like. And then the organization, whether it's a club or a country, has to start over. So how does that work?
Well, this is usually a typical the athletic podcast thing. Why do clubs fail? Or why do nations fail? So for me, it's more usually, and this is generally speaking, if you as a club president seldom do you know all the ins and outs and strategies of what you need to do in order to achieve success, in order to have like a business idea, more or less the same thing. If I will not prevail and outlive Jamaica, hands down, I know this, and I'm not going to be on the job forever, but I hope my ideas, my contributions to the bigger vision will outlive me. That's the ultimate aim. So the next one around should be actually about continue on that route. Who is the next one? So you need to precisely like you have a shadow team. You should have a shadow coach that can actually continue on the same path. This is almost like if our CEO dies tomorrow, who takes over? Same thing. Mannings get run over by a car tomorrow. Who takes over as the reverend?
He doesn't have a succession plan. He has no succession plan.
He doesn't.
He has no
No.
succession plan.
But John, how are you going to improve local youth football? Forget Europe, right? That's a question from James Smith.
I think I've already started, but you know, the ball is rolling, ball is on the grass. I want to be part of meeting the key stakeholders and say, what can we do to make the best out of it? This. Furthermore, what kind of consequences of our decisions, implications, that everyone is aware of the consequences of it. Right now, unfortunately, it's a very top-down approach on the ecosystem, so based on where we're at. First team, U20s, and going down. I would say what has to meet in between is starting from the grassroots and what we do from there. I hope that we can offer a very transparent on how to coach certain things, how to make it more principle based, and perhaps less I need to protect this info because if someone else gets this information or knowledge, I might be out of a job. I understand the cutthroat business and the landscape it is, but the coaches sometimes is not the problem. It's the people who make the decisions.
What just
There you
happened?
go. 16 goals. 16 goals. That's what I heard.
What just happened?
I
Yeah.
have no idea.
Yeah. Question for John. Have you had a chance to assess the talent pool and level of our current regional opponents at the U20 level, such as the USA and Mexico? And Duckland says, don't worry, man, when once Tenet falls, another one will take over.
Good for you. Good for you. I have assessed U.S. and Mexico because you always need to know the apex predators in the environment you're in, and those are the two. When it comes to the Caribbean, no, I have not. That thing I have started, and this is a process that leads up to the qualifiers. And it's not just me alone; it's other people involved in that process too. So the talent pool is still, as we know by facts, it's been a little bit depleted, and the oldest age group is 05 because of COVID. And even with a very small competitive cycle, even that was cut short because of COVID, if I understand everything correctly. So, and this is external factors that has obviously shaped the talent pool and affected it.
And I know you're also instrumental in the talent identification process. I know that is something that we have never had before, and that's part of a FIFA project. How important is beginning that and the whole national academy to that vision that you have for 2034? What role does that play?
It's the instrumental because it's hard to, even Ajax said this, you need to understand it's not just the coaching, it's the scouting that actually makes the difference too. Because the best need to train with the best. That's part of it. But at the same time, you need to have as many as possible continue to play for as long as possible. Otherwise, you are racing to the bottom, and instead of having thousands and thousands of players to select from, you only have a couple of hundred.
Yeah.
So it has to be a balance of everyone, but elite has to exist within it.
Okay.
So John, we're hearing a lot of things that inform direction of travel, right? And I'm listening to you talk about different elements that inform the strategy. And I don't want to get too technical on this, but a lot of that is sort of tactical in a sense, meaning what would be, if I give you a white sheet of paper and say, John, develop a holistic strategy for Jamaica football, because right now we're doing the tactical component. We're trying to get through each of the different levels, national team, under 17, under 20, and we have varying results, right? It's not consistent. And what we're doing doesn't seem to be very well thought out, strategic, and sustainable. So if I give you a white sheet of paper,
it is correct.
What and you can't give me every aspect of it, but what key elements would inform that strategy?
Key elements that I feel that the introduction of football is very street-based right now, meaning kids are playing on their own, which Europe, in a way, desperately wants to have back. Okay? Kids are playing the game on their own, where it's institutionalized in Western countries. Okay? That's one key component. That's one of the things that Jamaica still has the nurture and keep. Okay? How can we bring the streets into the 11v11 game?
Yeah.
So you say the skills that you develop at a very young age, but you're just playing and you get creative.
Yeah.
Like they did in Brazil way back when. Okay.
Yeah, personality. I mean, even dogs have personality. So instead of them becoming robots, still have the unique sense of you. Allow people to be them. But to a certain point where I see now from top down instead of bottom up. It's 11 1v1s being played. It's not 11v11.
Okay, because those said talents become individualized in the 11v11 game. So it was individuals doing
I
their
would
own
say
thing.
where structure is very abandoned, where
Yeah.
the individual has been ingrained into a structure so they can coexist.
Okay.
So the question: what's the
And
timing of that structure?
yeah,
Right? What's the optimal
here,
age for that structure to be put in
yeah,
place? Yeah.
yeah. Here it goes. I'm doing an example to the best of my knowledge. Belgium was the first nations to start actually playing 3v3 as the first introduction to football as a playing format. The overall curriculums have changed and are more accordingly to the playing formats: 3v3, 5v5, 7v7, 9v9, 11v11. So there are certain stages. And in a nutshell, football is an interactional sport of relationships that occur in a split second in where you actually execute decisions. So the social context of me playing 3v3, it's a kicking and a dribbling game, correct? Because they see where the ball goes. 5v5, all of a sudden, I can pass to my closest teammate. So we have 2 against 1. So we're gradually improving we're making it more and more complex. So key component, street, the playing formats, and eventually where you start to have meaning the best meets the best, parish level, and eventually national level, camps and so forth. And along the way, actually have a domestic scene of a youth league that exists going from local to national.
Okay.
And this is one of the key components of the whole schoolboy football versus international. Hey Mannings,
So
you're
in that
gonna
whole,
run, you're gonna do
go
the
ahead.
Ironman tomorrow. That's the same kind of thing that you're putting schoolboys in. Mannings, I know you're not gonna endure an Ironman.
And Endura what?
Yeah, Ironman. You're doing one full marathon. You're swimming and you're biking during the course of the day. You're gonna be dead. So it
True.
means
Yes.
we are putting players into a sink or swim environment instead of doing a gradual approach. But you're
Yeah.
always gonna have anomalies that just go straight through the system, early debuts and so forth.
Right. Right. Which is the point
Yes.
you're making. Part of what you were trying to
Yeah.
establish today. Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
playing formats and go ahead, Craig.
Go ahead.
Frank, no, hold on. Let me just say this, and then you can go back to that point, because James says that, John, you have to put in effect for Jamaica a system of play if you want the next person to continue. Right, the JFF can then hire on that premise. Not all coaches coach the same or use the same style. All right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I agree with John. You need to put in a system of play. What they can do is put in systems, or the principles that whatever coach comes in, whatever system he comes in, the principles are all understood by all the players, and so that makes a system that coach wants to implement works easy, because they all learn the same defensive principles, attacking principles, just those things. And if we're guided by those principles, then it's easier to adjust to a Brazilian coach with a system, a European coach with a system, a North American coach with a system. It doesn't matter. That's how I see it. But what is your take on what James?
Before you answer, John, I must say this. I thought John said earlier in the conversation that Catalonia, for example, have a style of play and a system of play which is influenced by the culture.
Yeah.
So as you go through the process and thought process, how does the Jamaica culture, whatever system what coach want to put in, how does the culture informs what a coach may want to implement?
And how much does the coach want to be informed? That is the question.
Yeah.
International football is a bad environment to make assumptions from, meaning the sample size is so small to make general factual conclusions, meaning the World Cup is so few games versus a club football context, right? So when you get these World Cup reports on trends and everything, it's might be a happening because you have a certain dominant player. It's still the player's game in the international football versus it's the coach's game that has become in a club game. So how does one inform you about the cultural context? Going to me is that I'm trying to observe as much as I can without talking. And it's probably at this point where I'm, as many say, I cause a shitstorm. But that's 14 months in. It's more observing how players act. But I would say the global game is to 80% standards, 20% can be social context and cultural context.
Interesting.
To be fair.
Cranky,
We all play the same game. Our interpretation of the game, that's what difference is.
Yeah. Somebody have been silent. Don't wake up. Yeah.
No. I've been listening and processing all these points, and I'm hopeful that the viewers as well can understand that a process like this is a matter of patience, and it's not an overnight quick fix sort of thing. So that's my hope in this process as well. And Mannings, you're more than welcome to let John know what is his new nickname, as mentioned in the comments.
So what is this? I don't know. What they call him? I don't see it. What they call him?
Well, he played for Manchester United and Bulgaria.
Oh, Berbatov. Oh, because they're saying that you're beating Cranky. Because Cranky normally give persons a very warm time when he's asking questions.
No, we're having a conversation. This is not a competition. This is not about beating. We're having a conversation. It's not a debate. Not debate.
Oh man.
Oh, but listen. An important thing is that in February when we play, the back end of February into early March when we play, it's not an official FIFA window. How does that affect you as a coach? It's not official in terms of window, both for the domestic players and the players who are probably in the States or in Europe. How does that affect like preparation, knowing that our FIFA allows the club to release the players, or it is a possible that some players will not be released because it's not a window? How does that work, and how do you prepare for the different scenarios?
I'll always try to prepare for bad weather and good weather.
Yeah.
Meaning, what if we all of a sudden get access to all players because their intention is to fulfill that? That is one possibility. And what if no is a frequent reoccurring thing, which might happen? So obviously, hence the 60-man provisional squad is an important part of that. Yes. And to actually let the clubs know from this point forward, these are the most likely players with subject to injuries and so forth. That might happen. But talking about good weather, we qualify for the next stage, summer. Meaning that it is in the summer, are the clubs more likely to release the players because of it's off season? Yes, more likely. So there might be a change up of the squad at that time as well.
Yeah.
Because what we want ultimately is the players that progress and the best players available. And we have a genuine representation of everyone. It's not about exclusion, it's about inclusion. So, yeah.
So John, how do you
that's what it's
identify?
about.
There are a lot of players with Jamaican heritage in the US and the UK who are playing at a pretty high level. And when they're pretty young, when they're older and they're playing for known teams, it's easier to identify them. Much more challenging when they're younger. How does one get that inventory of players and be able to gauge their interest in representing Jamaica?
Just to the fact of that you will have minimum one new name every day. That is the level of it is. And it's massive work, I'll tell you. And it's still about collecting the data, meaning name, where they're born and number and so forth, and current club, and start making assessment. But for us, guiding light is closer to senior level, elite environments, but there will be always players that are anomalies, the players that can make steps without being that close to that, but still they are as good. So of course, but honestly, Jamaica could play 6 U20 national teams. It wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't be a problem.
Now, there's the
But I can
concern, John,
only-
people have expressed. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I can only base my selection to what I know. I cannot base it on secondary or third information. Yeah.
So there are a couple of things. One is the question arises about stability of a squad, right? Whereby there's so many, as you're saying, there are a lot of players out there, probably good players that you don't know about. And if you keep replenishing the squad, you never have that consistency, that togetherness, that cohesiveness. So that makes it challenging. How does a coach or a manager deal with those situations? This is pretty unique, actually.
Yeah. And it's more that everyone likes to paint the worst kind of a scenario on it, and then they place cohesiveness, which is very an arbitrary word, by the way, that you talk about togetherness and everything. How does that feel, really? Can you touch on it? No. Football is communication, A and B. That's number one, meaning that you understand what you're doing within the team and your role. Correct? A unifying way to understand it. And obviously that takes time. And on an international level, it's probably how simple can you be that you can transfer that from A to B as quick as possible. Then it's about the selection, meaning this player would probably create a relationship to this player and what it brings. The good thing about U20s, my ultimate goal is to make sure that 100% of the whole team becomes first team players. That's the ultimate goal. I should strive for it, but it's less likely it will happen. But if I would get a retain rate of 50% that goes into the first team, that's really high. That's really high. So for me, a cycle still will have to a certain amount, consistency where they can integrate new players quicker, and the continuity is important. But the problem is, in Jamaica, after a tournament, everything stops. Nothing happens. Then they're on their own.
Yeah.
And the Bermuda Triangle for players is between 19 to 23.
A point you made earlier, I'm going to go back to what we talked earlier about the individual and the structure. So here's my question. I'm a big proponent of the fact that I think decision-making in football is a key in terms of a differentiator on the field. So, is that decision making come from repetition? Is it experience? Or is it taught? Or all three of the above?
That's my favorite subject in football. I would say, to a certain degree, some players might be born with it. But just as the statement, leaders are born, not made, that's just horseshit. It's design within sessions and constraints that actually allows decision making. And based on, to my knowledge, what I've seen, half the game is missing on a youth stage in Jamaica.
Half the game is missing on a youth stage in Jamaica?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I'm going to think why. I cannot write and show right now. But imagine the game as a full circle, okay?
Yeah.
A full circle. That's the entire game. You divide it in the middle by defending and attacking.
Yeah.
Okay? And then you make a small diagonal, so a part of defending is actually preventing goal scoring chances. And small part of build up and attacking is to create goal scoring chances and score. And the thing between those, you go from minus to plus, defending to attacking, and below you go from attacking to defending. Would you agree that's probably the game?
Yeah.
More or less. Yeah.
In a
what
circle.
I'm saying, you're not disturbing the build-up. You're more preventing goal-scoring opportunities because the structures that you're up against don't have that. It's ball, launch, goal-scoring chance. Agreed?
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. Agreed. And now I've seen X amount of games that this is consistent. Some anomaly will exist. How can decision making take place within that context where you have always someone telling you what to do when you're doing it and you're hanged publicly if you make a mistake?
Yeah, so that means that has to do with coaching education.
Yeah.
Well, you have to give the flexibility to make decisions which may be outside that paradigm, right? You have to be given the flexibility to realize when this doesn't fit the structure of how I'm operating.
No. Correct.
Or fit what's transpired in that current environment, and then be able to pivot and make a decision that may not be part of that whole paradigm. Yeah.
And ultimately, you want young players to have the mind of a 30-year-old that's been through it and know when, how, and what, correct? And why. But you can recreate it by empowering players along the way instead of having the hierarchical status of a coach and empowering the players to this level, and you do go on that journey together. But there will be times when it's obvious you're the coach and that's the player.
All right.
And I think that social context derives from the school system in Jamaica too.
So John, I think I have I just got the ideal video. Let me see if I can get it here. Hold on. Because I think, but go ahead and I'm going to try and find a video that I think is, it speaks ideally to what you're sharing. Right?
I just shared for the video, but I have another question for John. So, John, I watched few players play football. Two defenders, Zinchenko and Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I'm watching them play, very good offensively, and sometimes defensively, I'm thinking, is it that they just don't care? Is it that it's not in their DNA? Because I could see a play developing, a player going to make a true pass that go behind them, and they're not recognizing that at all. And my question is, well, why is that the case? They're in an environment which is conducive to them learning. They have been taught really well. Why can't they execute? Or why can't the mind allow them to think to say, this is happening, I can anticipate this play and prevent it from occurring?
Yeah. Ultimately, we would like to describe everything that occurs and happens on a field when it comes to decision making. And this is actually that we've been formed by the society that if this, then that. Meaning A happens, it becomes B, and B becomes C, and it's D. The brain does not operate like a computer. And I could accept to the fact that Trent Alexander-Arnold doesn't have a single DNA structure in his body to understand what's happening when it crosses above him and coming in behind. But that's me and you and I, we're having a beer and discussing football in a way. But I would say it's more about what you put the player on, where there's actually consequences of their actions, and there are rewards too. But within it, it is ecological approach, what you can do as a coach, where as much as you can do as a coach, there has to come to a place where the players takes over and takes responsibility.
So let me play
Or
this
to
video.
the fact that yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me play this video, John, and then you can break it down, and then based on the point you were making earlier, see. So this is there you go.
Put one to the ball, and you know read the flight for the ball. When I read the game and push every time, you go stop, go stop, go stop. Make up your mind for the way you want to do. You can't go and stop and go and stop and go and stop. You're the last defender. 50-50 ball becomes 70 in a deer field because you're going to stop. You're going to stop. You're not certain. My defender them can't play like that, Brethren. You can't play like that. I mean, I want to see you read the game so well. Today, at 3 days.
Mannings, what was that?
That is the halftime talk.
First of all, does John understand that? That's the first question. Does John understand?
I do.
John is fluent.
I have had my crash courses in Patois.
Yeah, John is fluent in Patois.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what about that instruction that yeah, because that's what you're
my question, I'm just gonna what instruction?
Go on and stop. My defenders can't play like that. You can't just go on and stop. So what that really means is that if you're going, you're going. And if you're stopping.
No, again.
No, it means you're hesitating too much. You gotta just go through.
Okay. The core of it is like this. To my knowledge, a lot of things is result-based and result-driven, even in youth football in Jamaica. Agreed?
Yes.
I agree. Yeah. So coaches feel insecure about their position. Correct?
Yes, they do.
I would think that's all coaches, but go ahead. That's all coaches. No, where they reside.
No. Living on the volcano is a different thing. I accept how the things work, but it's fine. But if it's down to your livelihood, how are you going to act? And this is not the clip in itself that I'm referring to, but there's so many non-contextual words that does not belong to football, where it actually is close to child abuse instead. And this is not physical, it's verbal. And that, for myself, is very scary. how can we expect players to be themselves and express themselves and develop at a faster rate, where the always consistent is going to be that your people are throwing things at you, meaning verbally and anything, and how do we create a learning environment? And that's going to lead to what I think, okay, I'm coming in at halftime, I'm just going to shut it off because I know what's going to happen.
I thought that was Jose Marino when I first
No.
saw the tape.
Yeah, good. He's making some excursions too. It's good for him.
No. But somebody saying that, maybe persons under the kids understood what the coach is saying, but it's not the matter of understanding what the coach is saying. The question is, and just generally, and I've heard it sometimes as well, like some of the words used to describe when the kids, especially kids, make mistake, and I don't think it is just. Maybe it's not in Jamaica, but sometimes it is very there. I have seen games of coaches at high school level, even physically, I would say physical abusing players in giving instructions, and people think it is normal because the players still stay and play with the team. But I don't believe that is the best the best advice. I've seen them call players. Yo, you're an idiot, man. What time you tell if you not dribble out? You understand me? But like I said, that is part of the culture that needs to change. You understand me? But it is accepted by many. There are many people who accept that.
But that doesn't mean it's okay.
No, it's not. But it is
that's the first thing. Yeah. But it doesn't mean, okay, everyone goes this way. Oh, I followed because everyone thought it was okay. It's still the same thing. The best way
you're saying you have to coach. You have to coach the coach.
Yeah, and the best way to change a culture is to actually start by changing the language.
So an interesting you could suggest you can say is the point of gaining exposure monies, because if we're being frank, not all coaches have had the experience of leaving the shores of the island.
Yeah.
So getting him that experience of being in that professional environment and seeing what the day-to-day is like back to Jamaica, making a presentation would certainly be a world of good in terms of their development as well.
Yeah. I don't think it's about leaving the island. I think it's about you having, we go back to about structure and process and strategy. We talked about in this conversation tonight, which is you have to train the trainers.
Yeah.
Right? You have to train the trainers, and you have to have people who actually are accredited to train the trainers so they can learn, and they go through a process where they get accreditation to substantiate that they can actually perform when they go out in the field to execute. So you have to train the trainers. Yeah. And if you don't train the trainers they've come up that way, and they distribute and disseminate information the same way they've come up and how they have learned.
And I like what Simon just said.
That's another question.
Go ahead.
That is, how would I say? That's a further stage problem to deal with. But what I would say, how many D-licensed coaches per players do you have in Jamaica? How many C-licensed coaches do you have per player in Jamaica? How many B and A and so forth? That's where the standard is.
Yeah.
And from that point, you can start talking about the level.
I like what Simon said, because I can tell you this. Here, in travel soccer in the States, especially because in Jamaica, let's just use the context, because I've been in both spaces. You don't have a lot of parents, especially if it's outside of like prep school football. At prep school football, you may have a lot of coaches at the games, but they don't necessarily come to the training sessions. When you're in the States, a lot of the kids are brought to training, and they travel to the games with their kids. So the parents are normally there. So you don't get to call a child an idiot. You don't get to kind of rough up a child because the parents are there. So I think sometimes the exposure in other environment, like Simon had said earlier, I think would certainly help in terms of how they communicate their instructions and deal with kids, because professionalism is not just like I said earlier. All right, the kid need to know that he need to get to training, not just get to training, but if training starts at 11:50, at 11:50 you're not putting on your boots and your shin guards and stuff. You're on the field and ready. But so if the kids need to do that, then the coaches also need, especially at the grassroots levels, to be able to speak in a professional way, because we are not preparing kids for JPL, we are preparing kids for Europe, we are preparing kids for college, and so we have to become more mindful of the words we use and even how we speak to them. And like I said, up to last season, I saw a coach physically abusing kids in our high
Okay.
school football.
Yeah, that's
That's
a long term. That's a long term solution. A lot we're talking tonight requires long term solutions. This is not an overnight change, and it's strategic solutions, right? You're talking about different. We're talking about a number of different things that informs that overarching strategy, and those things takes a while to implement. Right? We're
Yeah.
not the states where you
and
have
what I would
$2,000 per
yeah,
cost per kid, and
no
parents can afford to go to game. You don't have that structure
no.
and resources.
What I would say, U.S. is a very bad example because the parents become customers and they think the customer is always right too.
They're gonna tell you how to coach. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like me walking into the airplane and say, "Hey, flight captain, I think you should go that way instead." It's the same way,
Exactly.
and that's what people think about football. But that's the beauty of the game too. And people are having YouTube shows and they express their mind. Oh, sorry, Mannix, you were here. Sorry. Meaning it's a self-entitlement that I kind of love, and what makes the whole thing spicy too. But the respect for professionally educated coaches that are constantly trying to re-educate or improve themselves, that is probably what we have to start from. I would say start with a smaller core. Sorry, it becomes almost like the Jesus and his apostles. But you have to build it with a smaller amount of people that can grow and grow and grow, and it becomes a following eventually. And then you can affect the problem. And what you have in front of you here, you cannot solve it head on always. You have to work with younger players that you can actually reshape that whole thing. So that problem is not going to exist further along the line.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything schools can do to assist with this football shift?
They can, of course. Trying to employ coaches longer than just one semester at a time.
It's a results business.
Provocative. Yeah.
And the alumni are not patient. The alumni are not patient.
No.
They're like the
Good for
fans
them.
in
Old
Europe.
boys
They're
club.
not patient.
Yeah, old boys club. Good for them. Bragging rights and all that. It's very
Yes.
important to be the king of the town instead of the prince of the country, correct?
How many of the top Swedish players, John, came through the kind of system that you speak of in Sweden itself? Like
It's been
Henrik
it's
Larsson, Zlatan are some of the names we can Schmeichel. Um,
Those are bad examples. The
okay.
best way to path in and look 5 years back. That's it. Because players at that age was probably not in academies. But I think, first of all, get coaches to get an acceptance that being a coach is actually a full-time job. Number one. Number two is, if you're looking at this right now, the shift is that a lot of players come from the actually elite academy system right now when it comes to Norway, Denmark, Sweden. and especially UK too, and that's been kind of the major shift because the Scandinavian countries have not existed with an academy system for that many years. Then I'm not talking, it's more like 15 years, 20, that's it. A lot of players came from smaller places. They started to play with their first team at a very young age, then left to a bigger club and then propel.
Okay.
Now it's more players that are consistently more in academies. That's why it's been a very urbanization of the talent. That it's very Stockholm centered, Gothenburg, Malmö, Copenhagen, Oslo, and so forth.
Okay.
And that is a social effect. But furthermore, is that those players go from academies and then get picked up by clubs in second and third tier at a pretty young age, make first team debut, and then move on. So I would say it's becoming less players coming from smaller places and taking a different route. But I think that I've developed players in both cases and how you can mitigate both environments. And it's pretty interesting.
Okay. So like,
So not to be a pessimist, John. Not to be a pessimist, but I'm just thinking about what you just talked about. You made a comment like coaching has to be a full-time job. Now, as you know, as one developed talent in the more developing world, the industrialized world pick up those talent because the developing world cannot compensate the coaches at the level or any discipline as you can industrialized world. So if Jamaica went out and developed all these coaches and gave them B, D, C, A license, they'd probably end up in the US at some point. How does one mitigate that actually? Is that even, can that even be mitigated?
It can. I would say it's more about caring about the next one. Accept the fact, take that into a club context. If you're a smaller club, your coach do well, the coach will move on. Correct. Same thing about development versus industrious country, right? Accept that, but what are you doing in order to develop your own next one instead of you have to go outside and hire one? So creating a school of excellence that always think about for every outside candidate, we need to have an internal candidate too.
Yeah.
You know what? I come from that kind of environment myself, where every position within the first team environment need to have an internal candidate too. And that excelled the growth of the coaches.
Yeah. Let me ask this question. One of my texters just very important point. They said, you do not change culture overnight because a lot of what you're talking about is changing the whole footballing culture from how we presently are to where we need to be to have sustainable success in terms of not just making the World Cup in 2026, but 2030 and progressing 2034, 2038, and all of that. All right. So the question is, where did the players come from that qualified for all our youth World Cups, right? And some of the suggestion you are making, the text is asking, how sustainable are these things over the long term? And then, right? So that's one question. And the first question is, where did the players come from that qualified for all our youth World Cups? I mean, I can answer that. They came from the domestic.
Yeah. Okay, but then yet again, to be in the one-off in a way, I'm going to be very provocative. How many times have we qualified for youth World Cups?
3 times, 217 and 120.
Yeah.
Okay, and do you think is the trophy cabinet full right now?
Not
No, it looks like Tottenham's, to be fair.
Yeah, but what people say is that when compared to probably CONCACAF, I think probably just 3 teams have possibly done better than us.
Yeah,
In
Now,
but
what I
terms
said
of
is
then again,
qualification is a trophy. Qualification is a trophy.
yeah,
Like
so
Arsenal
yeah,
top 4 was
exactly.
a trophy.
Yeah,
so like some persons are saying, like, if we can qualify one, that's good. And then the other thing should be, though, that those players that qualify, like you have been suggesting, they if 50%
Matriculate to
of
the.
those players right into the first team, wouldn't that be success?
it is. But yet
Yeah.
again, how can you become consistent in a very inconsistent environment? Ultimately, the past and the growth of the sport of football is so fast that people don't realize what's happening. If you're trying to lean on old past success, someone is above you by miles and in front of you by miles. It's a bad comparison. What I'm trying to do is trying to do it with a bow like this, trying to reach for the stars and you reach the ceiling. If you aim for the ceiling, you reach the floor. That's ultimately the thing that what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So, John, for international football, I have this theory that international football is less about coaching and more about organization, frankly. What is your perspective? Because you don't have the time to really coach international football. Short windows, put a team together, you go play a tournament, and you got to go back to their club, wherever they come from. So, what's your thoughts in terms of what makes a coach
Yeah.
effective in international football?
Coach less, evaluate more.
Some more recruiting, then.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's your words. It's not me. Meaning you cannot have a huge bandwidth of coaching where you have to be very sparse in your coaching to get strategy and organization transferred that this works, people understand, can adapt to it pretty quickly, and can ultimately convert it to something efficient, meaning winning.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of club coaches transferred to the international environment where they had a hard time. Whereas in club, they had more time to actually bend it to their will as they want. Whereas the beauty of international football, you're kind of restricted to what you have. What do you make out of it?
Here's the next question, right? What guarantees we have that these players will not switch association when them boss? So they play U17 or U20, they go there, have a good U17, U20, and switch allegiance. What guarantees we have that if they represent now, they wouldn't switch allegiance to a next nation? If
What do
they
you
have,
do to what do you do to maintain to have the same girlfriend or boyfriend and make it to your wife? What guarantees do you have in life?
you have to ask Simon. Simon not married yet.
No.
No guarantees.
Don't get poor. Don't get poor.
Just do the best you can. Do the best you can.
Ultimately, the good thing about you don't play international football to earn money. Ultimately, it's not that. It's about relationships and how you nurture that, and they can see a pathway. But ultimately, a player can shift, and that's, believe it or not, that's how the global game works now. And the same thing for the first team, that we can grab players from other countries that have not gone in and they shift. But it might be from other reasons, and might be the lack of how we sell our vision and our intention of what we do. How can we create a sustainable or a messaging that's clear the why, so more people will join, but let the right people join us. Not everyone can join us.
Yeah.
I'm so naive. I'm so naive that I actually believe in that.
Yeah, listen, like so I believe that if we have a U20 team and the players do well, I think that is a greater guarantee that they will want to move on if they are good enough to the senior team. I think it's harder for me. I think it's harder for a player to switch when they represent at the youth level and do well and feel a sense of welcoming and that I'm a part of this nation. I think once they get embedded into the culture that early, I believe it's harder at that point. I don't know that we have had one yet. We haven't had like, like I said, at youth level we haven't had many. I think the largest amount we had was the last U20 with Kanaya, Clark, Tyler was there. I think you could say Dexter and a few of them, and none of them I think have any desire to go and represent England. So I think it is better when at the younger level they are brought into the system because they commit to the senior team from that point. I think it's harder if you wait until they get to the senior ranks to try and bring them in.
Ultimately, you want probably 15 years of service instead of 5.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
there's a war for talent, and the question is, what are you using to influence that talent to join your organization? Right? What's the difference? What are you bringing to the table to that talent to convince them to join your organization? That, to me, that's the question. And can you make a compelling case for them to join you versus their mother country, for example?
Yeah. Actually, because of the amount of horseshit and bullshit is thrown around into the business, I try to be very transparent.
And in today's environment, as you know, John, I mean, people like Southgate are really realizing this is a problem for them actually going forward.
Yeah.
They're reacting to this. They're not just sitting on their laurels and says, well, we're guaranteed for them to play for our country. They're making concerted effort to have those players commit to, for example, the UK. So, yeah.
Yeah, even Albania has an office in London.
Yep.
The FA.
Right. And then here's a question also. Should we be considering something like that? What is it, the US, London? I mean, resources, I get comebacks to be a challenge, but shouldn't that be something that we're thinking about?
Of
something, a location in those countries where you can actually have an office where you can engage people.
Yeah. Instead of sending one person at a time, ultimately, let's cover in flights and hotel and everything. And if you do those 4 or 5 travels a year, how much time are you covering? Or actually ground are you covering versus actually have an office, one employee that sets things up. It's just a very easy price comparison and the kind of effect that it does.
Yeah,
I would say
you can think very business in international football. Ultimately, it's supposed to generate things. And Argentina has an office in the US. Mexico even built a training facility in Miami.
Yeah. And they have a contract where they have to play a minimum number of games within the United States. So that right there is also feeding for the diaspora and that connection. And of course, revenue.
And someone is saying that Morocco has their office in France and they have one in Spain as well.
Of course.
So one in London, one in Toronto, one in Miami or New York. That would be great.
It's interesting. That's something that we should really look into.
I would say one in London and one up north, Sam.
Manchester.
London, one up north.
Yeah, Yorkshire, Manchester. Yeah.
But I would say it's more either you can think you are very little or you can actually think that you're actually big enough to take them on, but do it differently.
Yeah.
It's just one decision away, really.
Yeah.
What about those persons who like like so just because I want to make sure that people don't think I'm very one-sided in my opinion, so I have to ask these questions. So the people are saying that, but isn't when people like the persons in Jamaica who live on the island will say, but isn't football for the people? So if we see players who represent us, we don't have that a connection with them because they are from the diaspora. Why should we go out and watch them? We don't know them. What about my little star from my community? Who is going to come to the community so we can, yeah, and make noise? I mean, is that a real issue, or we have to look beyond that and go beyond that because um, but there are persons I believe in Jamaica who would feel that way, like, what about the youth from my community that have been watching, and where is he? I can't even watch him. Will he not stop playing football if he can't? What about that? And because I heard that argument today, wouldn't a lot of players, or will not a lot of players just probably give up because they don't see this elaborate plan is going to take 20 years. And so right now, maybe I need to start having some kids and prepare them so that they can benefit 20 years. But as for me, it's not going to happen.
So, John, let me just pile on. John, let me pile on and say this. It's a zero-sum game. Every player you may draw from the overseas diaspora community is at the expense of a local player. That's the thought process. And the people overseas have more resources, and the player locally does get a chance to get exposure to go generate resources for his or her family.
There is no contradiction in the two. What we're actually kind of trying to compare is apples and oranges. The talent is equally shared. I would say even talent-wise, Jamaica has more than the population actually could muster, potentially. My reflection is that what do we do that leads up to the final stage? It's reoccurring. It's not, don't hate the player, hate the game. Sorry, but what systematic things we do and where they have less, it's for the people, yes. But ultimately, if we're always going to let the people decide what they want, they not always do not know what they want. They want wins. Correct? The people want wins.
It's a results business.
And yeah. And they would want ultimately to have a representation. That is still going to happen because we are doing actions that's going to allow more a selected few to be allowed in those environments where there are actually can compete at that potential level. But I would say what deciding factors that are leading up to it, that's the differentiator. But if we're just allowing the survival of the fittest to keep on being the thing, this is never going to take off. Sorry. Yeah. This is never going to take off.
Yeah. All right. This is going to be because you guys had a very long day, and it's supposed to be 1 hour. We have doubled that. So this is last few questions, and then you all have 2 minutes
Manning's
to wrap
time.
Up. Yeah, because I don't want to keep, unless you guys want to stay, but I think this is good. And yeah, but the thing is that, so John decides, hey, I'm tired of Manningsman and Simon, man. I'm going back to Sweden. These two guys are just not good company anymore, right? I'm going back to Sweden. I can't deal with this. If it were for the rest of Jamaica, I would stay, but just Simon likes to play and he's here, and Manning's with this church thing is not going to work, right? What the next person who comes in place, what do they have to work with?
And
that's for you, John.
Yeah, that is for me. All right, thank you, Chris. What I would say is that there are project funding that's been taken. There is a mission and a vision when it comes to talent development. It is. That's been proved within FIFA, JFF, all the key stakeholders, that there is something. But it's not the bold words, it's the actionables and the deliverables. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. There are people that wants the game well. They do. And those are not going to change even though I'm gone. But I would even say, how about actually having a new person comes in and they would actually, one of the things that they would talk to me, so I would deliver, this has been done, this is what needs to be the actionables, and what I see within the next 12 months, this would be 24 to 36 months. A handover instead of a shut door and people have to second guess what's been done. But what I made sure of is that everything is documented. And those documents are not mine to hold on to. That is Jamaica's.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving it all behind, if so.
Okay. All right. Simon, what do you want to say in closing?
I appreciate, as always, you having me on. I think it was very an informative discussion with the four of us, and I hope that today's press conference, for those that had an opportunity to watch, understand the direction that we're headed, and we put all hands on deck because of what 2024 is like, being 2 wins away from a trophy, playing in one of the biggest competitions in the world, and of course World Cup qualifying starting. So this is the point where we need all stakeholders together so that we can continue on this journey together.
Awesome. Cranky?
No, it was an enlightening discussion. It's interesting. I think to attain John's vision, there's a lot of work to be done, actually. A lot of creative work, because when you don't have resources at your disposal, I don't have all the resources at your disposal, you have to be creative. And that's going to be challenging. But I think if you have the right stakeholders with the right mindset, the right level of critical thinking, that you can achieve much more than the resources at your disposal. So hopefully we have people with that perspective and the stakeholders in play. After we have this election in the JFF, we can have people in seat who are strategic in their thinking, who can work with different bodies to achieve what I call a national goal of developing footballers to the point where we have structure in place, process in place, and we can have a sustainable construct to allow us to have continued success.
Yeah, wonderful. Anything you want to say in closing, John? Somebody was just saying that looked like you were smoking a high-grade spliff before you came on because you have been coughing a whole lot.
Yeah, it's my dry cough. I'm sorry about that, but not to make everyone sad. I have not done a spliff. I'm still coughing because of a cold that my 2-year-old gave me before I came to Jamaica. So yeah, thanks preschool. You earn the degree of problems you have, but you will always have problems. But you should look upon them as opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my perspective on a lot of things. So right now we have X amount of problems, which is more standards. And when it comes more to the fine tuning, that's a different thing.
Okay. Awesome. Listen, Simon, I did say we're going to close, but Duclan says he wanted to hear about the plans for the girls, that 4-team competition.
Sure, no problem. So as we know, 2024, the girls are not in the Gold Cup. So what they'll basically be using is the FIFA windows as friendlies. So basically what the plan is either in June or July to have a 4-team tournament in Jamaica. The plan is Montego Bay. Hopefully, the Catherine Hall's sports complex will be ready, and this in itself would continue the preparation for the girls as they start their World Cup qualifiers 2025. So therefore, 2024 will be the last year to get the pieces together, perhaps a bit of experimentation, develop synergy, and also grow together. So that's the plan for June, July 2024.
So, Mannings man, we had such a good discussion, and you had to bring this up. So Simon can tell us we're not going to be in the Gold Cup. Really? So you can remind us of this situation.
Don't blame me. Blame the other student. Blame.
Hey, not all massages, Cranky, ends with a happy ending.
Apparently not.
But listen, really appreciate you coming on. Listen, I can tell you, not just his coaching acumen and ability to identify talent, but when I talk about resourceful, like there is not something that is needed in the national team that John doesn't find something that can do the job. So if the clothes need to be washed separately, he finds some bag, you can put them in, and if the bag is not working, he finds these yellow strings that you connect your stuff to.
So John is a tailor. He's a tailor.
No, he's just
patching up a lot. He's patching up a lot of stuff.
I'm telling you.
No. I'm part of the GSD family, Karanki. And you know what the GSD family does?
No. What it does?
No, get shit done. Simple as that.
You know what? I have a group called GSD, Great Sports Debaters. Don't you have given me its meaning for it?
No, it's GTD.
Oh, it's G.
Get things done. That's what it is.
Oh.
Replace the S what he said with the T.
Change the S. Yeah.
But the fact is, I'm taking care of shit too, Cranky. So you're see the diapers at home, I get the shit done.
Yeah, man. But thank you so much. Because I know you had a long day. I really appreciate you coming on, and I know your U20 group that you have to play the game yesterday against Portmore just to stretch their legs, and it ended 3-1. And just the reports are that having not had many sessions, that they really did well in short notice. So kudos to you and to the team as they continue to work. We look forward to February. High expectations. Just from what I know, that many persons are delighted in terms of what they have heard from you. And again, for me, it is a privilege just knowing you and being able to work with you, the senior team. And I know you'll do a great job, not just with the U20s, but just your vision for Jamaica's football. And I've told people that I think you're more than a coach. In fact, I think the role you can play in the football is bigger than being the coach of a U20. I think, your ability to connect and network is awesome and thing,
Yeah. I'm really grateful for you saying that, but I don't live on the praise. What feeds me is the next thing, to be honest. Yeah. And there's plenty of things to do. I'm just trying to make up for the time lost, I would say, in the past. But yet again, there's been people in the past that you're standing on the shoulder of giants too. Meaning you're part of the journey is just to continue the path, right? And hopefully shaping things up. What I can recommend for everyone to watch is when they actually brought in wolves into Yosemite, or what is the other national park, Cranky, it actually altered how the river run. They brought them back after 50 years, an apex predator. Yeah. Actually, even an animal can alter things that were not thought even to be that you could change it.
Somebody said Yellowstone?
Yeah, Yellowstone, yeah. So it's a 5-minute video. It's very interesting how that can change an ecosystem.
What's it called? Tell them again.
I think if you just Google wolf into Yellowstone,
Yeah.
and
And
then
people,
it
let me
comes to
tell you,
4 minutes and 54 seconds.
everything that John will say, he can find a movie. Like, we should bring him on and just give a word, and he can tell you a movie, a song, or a book. He will tell you the name of a movie, the line from a song, or the quote from a book concerning any topic you can come up with. Challenge him when you see him at training or at a game. He will come up with a movie title, a book he has read, right, Simon?
Yes, you're right.
Or some lyric from a song. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too much time on an airplane, probably.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope we rebalance the elk and deer population in Jamaica. Huh? like the wolves did. Let's hope we balance the population.
Yeah.
I get a good mix.
Right.
And many persons learned this today, that the original word that Jamaica came from, not Jamaica, because that means land of wood and water. But
Well, no, it was a Y word with Taino. The Tainos, what they were, that had that word before, right? I mean, you can break up that Jamaica word, but I think there was the tribe that was here before, or in Jamaica before, where the wood and water come from, actually, that whole concept.
Yeah, but John said it comes from a word that means stuck.
I am stuck.
I am stuck. Okay. See, yeah. Somebody just put this up.
Jamaica.
Jamaica.
Yeah.
Which is the Tainos tribe, or the tribe was that Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Manning's was good.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Good meeting you, John. Simon, as usual.
Good meeting you, Cranky.
Have a good
Simon.
night.
Pleasure. Manning's man. I liked when you start talking about yourself in fourth person too.
Wow. Fourth person. Wow. A new one.
fourth person.
Yeah, this is Manning's man here, but what Manning's man doesn't like, you see, then it becomes fourth.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, night.
Good night.
Listen, yeah, man. So,
as you go out the chat, people just hit the like button as you're leaving.
Yeah.
Some of you haven't hit it.
Right. Yeah, man. So thank you so much, everyone. Please remember that at 11 a.m. tomorrow, Jamaican time, we'll have Charlene from AFTV and Cecil from AFTV.
I thought you told me Cecil was going to be on tomorrow at 11. We have to talk.
Yeah, because he said that they have a women's game on Saturday, and Arsenal play on Sunday, so it's been a lot of content. So
I have a day job, I have a day job. I'm not a pastor. I have a day job. Okay.
So,
We'll talk.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So people have a wonderful.
So you actually have to work for a living, not talk for a living. That's
exactly. Exactly. That's a good one. All right.
Yeah, man. But this hasn't been I Am Sure Sports, and as usual, when it gets to the end of the program, we say we are over, and we are OUT out of here.
Yo, watch about dog. SK New Erdis. The body out there. Sniper King I represent for I Am Sure Sports. You get to me, I say, when you want the latest news and sports and updates and all of that, check out I Am Sure Sports. You know the thing was in. Remember, cover the whole island. Remember Kingston, Westmoreland, Galchester, Ocho-Race, Galtigo Bay. Everywhere. I Am Sure Sports. Check it out for the latest news and latest updates. Sniper King I represent. Where them feel like? Ha. Yeah, someone on for the food from young, from where they knee height. I Am Sure Sports. Yeah, dog.